Hi everyone, my name's Abby Dougherty. I am an assistant clinical professor here at Drexel University, and I am very excited today to talk to you about my presentation, Mindfulness in VR. Now let's get started. So I thought before we get started, we just do a little bit of breathing together. And this is a 2-minute self-compassion meditation, mindfulness meditation from one of the applications we're going to explore today. If you want to close your eyes for the meditation, no problem. We're going to look at lots of clips today. So go ahead and take a moment for a little self-compassion.
This guided meditation is a variant on the classic loving kindness practice. Now I'd like you to bring to mind some aspect of your personality or perhaps some mistake you made, a failure that has been bothering you lately. Something that perhaps you've been criticizing yourself for, or that has made you feel inadequate in some way. How have you felt when you've thought about this inadequacy? And so what we'll do now is repeat some phrases, loving kindness phrases designed to help you feel compassion for the fact that you're an imperfect being. You try your best, but no one on this planet is perfect. We're all inadequate in some way. We all make mistakes. We all fail. This is a human experience. It's okay. May I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I be kind to myself. May I accept myself as I am. May I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I be kind to myself. May I accept myself as I am. And thank yourself for being a good, supportive friend. May we all be well and safe, happy and free.
Okay, so I hope you had a moment to just ground yourself into the present. And so today we're going to take a look at what VR is, how we can use mindfulness in VR. What is this experience that we're calling mindfulness in VR? We'll have a chance to look at some lived experiences and think about how this might relate to counseling in the future. So I just wanted to start us out with a definition of virtual reality. There's lots of definitions out there, so I wanted to just have a common definition to get us started here. And Fred Brooks, he's done a lot of research into VR here, and his definition here is the one I'm going to use, which is that VR, the definition of VR, is the experience in which the user is effectively immersed in a responsive virtual world. So, sort of what's unique here is that the user has control of their viewpoint, which is really at the heart of defining VR from other types of media. You're fully immersed and the environment is interactive. And just very briefly, I wanted to talk about the different types of head-mounted displays that you can use to engage in virtual reality. Something like the Oculus Go or the Gear VR, the Google Daydream, or the Google Cardboard. All of these devices are pretty common, they're accessible, they're easy to use, there's lots of good applications out there for them. But just to note that these type of virtual reality head-mounted displays only have rotational tracking, meaning that the view that you see is going to it's not going to update if you want to like sort of walk up to an object and the view, let's say I want to look at a plant up close. The view isn't going to change as though I'm looking up close at that plant. But that's called 6 degrees of freedom in virtual reality. And you do have that opportunity using something like the Vive or the Oculus Rift, because it has both rotational and positional tracking. The 6 degrees of freedom means that I can look underneath or reach behind an object. And this leads to, just a little bit more of an immersive experience. But you also are going to pay for it. They're much more expensive than the other head-mounted displays. And so let's talk a little bit about some important terms to think about when we're talking about virtual reality. So immersion, presence, and how does this relate to the VR hardware that we're using? Well, first of all, immersion is incredibly important to our experience in VR. Immersion in VR is really the perception of being physically present in a non-physical world. So it's how much do I really believe something exists? And the VR system, the hardware, helps us to have this immersive experience by using images and spatialized sound. Spatialized sound just means, if I'm close to another person in VR, I can hear them, and if I move away, I won't hear them. So this really matches reality. And then there's this thing called haptics, which means that I'm going to feel stuff or force in both ways when you're touching something. So if I put my virtual reality coffee mug down on a table, I'm going to have some force when I do that to let me know I've put it down on the table. Haptics are still evolving. For example, there isn't a haptic for smell. So if my virtual reality house is burning down, I'm not going to smell it. So there's still some evolution to occur here. And then there's this really important idea here about, that sort of adds to the immersion, which is sensory motor contingency. And this is a theory of active vision that describes how we use our bodies to perceive the world. These are implicit rules about how we perceive the world, right? So we don't have to think about them. So if I want to look behind you, I don't say to myself, oh, I'm going to need to move my head to the right and then lean forward a little bit. These are implicit. I just know how to use my body to perceive the world. I don't have to think about it. And so the more sensory motor contingencies there are, the more immersive the experience I'm going to have. And just how immersive can virtual reality be? Well, I've seen lots of clips online and just sort of working with other people in virtual reality where, for example, I saw a man using a VR roller coaster at the mall and he started screaming his head off. So there can really be a wow factor there. And for counselors and clinicians who are using virtual reality for exposure therapies, the more sensory motor contingencies there are, the more I'm going to feel like it's real. So if I'm in an application that's helping me with my fear of heights, the more that I have sort of those sensory motor contingencies, the more it's going to really feel like I'm experiencing looking, far down, let's say off the top of a building. And then we have this idea about presence. And Slater here, he talked about that presence in VR can really be broken down into 3 steps here, or 3 ideas. He calls the 3 illusions. So the first one is place illusion. And this is the illusion of being in a place even though you're not there. So again, the more sensory motor contingencies you have, the more you're going to feel like you're really in that place. So if you knock on a door, does it open? And do all of those experiences form to your expectation? Then you have plausibility, which is, is this thing that's happening right now really happening? So are people and, avatars in your world really responding as though it's plausible? So I'll give you an example. I play a VR game where one of the avatars sort of responds to me in predictable ways. And so this leads to a little bit less plausibility and ultimately for me led to less motivation to engage. And then there's the illusion of body ownership. So this is just that your virtual body is really your body. And finally, just to, heads up, if you're getting one of the sort of higher models of virtual reality, head-mounted displays like the Vive or the Rift, you're going to need a really good graphics card. So you're not just investing in the head-mounted display, but you're also going to be, of course, updating some of your computer software or hardware. And where can you get the applications that we're going to be talking about today? Well, all of the head-mounted displays have their own store. There's lots of good ones on Google Play. You can go on YouTube even and look up 360 videos for virtual reality, and there's millions. If you're looking for applications in particular, my favorite place to download apps is from Steam VR, which is a web-based platform for getting your VR applications, and that's because there's just a lot more variety for cross-platform applications. And so I just also wanted to start off with a definition of mindfulness to get us started today. So we're going to start with Zen's, very popularly noted mindfulness definition, which is that mindfulness is a focused, intentional awareness of moment-to-moment experience without judgment. And this is a very commonly referred to definition in the literature. And I also really like Bishop et al.'s definition here, also very commonly cited: the self-regulation of attention so that it's maintained on immediate experience, thereby allowing for increased recognition of mental events as the present moment. And then the second component involves adopting a particular orientation towards one's experience in the present moment, an orientation that is characterized by curiosity, openness, and acceptance. And then here you also see the tree of contemplative practices, which really just expands our notion of what it means to engage in a mindfulness practice. I really think of mindfulness and virtual reality as being a very a visual meditation. And we can see here in the tree that there's all different types of meditation: movement, art-based, engaging in dialogue and storytelling. All of this can have contemplative or mindful experiences to them. So what's mindfulness in VR? Well, I loved this the title of this article by The Guardian: Meditation in Virtual Reality. It's like French philosophy meets the Matrix. And I'm going to introduce you today to Reverend Jeremy Nichols, who he is the owner of Evolve VR, and he calls mindfulness in VR a third way. And then my own definition, reflecting on all the definitions we've covered thus far, is that mindfulness in VR is focused attention in the present moment with curiosity within a responsive, immersive virtual world. So let's talk about sort of, just all the applications that are out there. I mean, this is just a small sort of overview of some of the ones that I really liked, and to sort of give you an overview of some of the differences and similarities. So we're going to take a look today at some clips from guided meditation. And I love guided meditation. There are all these different environments to explore that are very soothing and calming. You can choose to have music. There are all different types of mindfulness exercises to choose from: relaxation, self-compassion. There's even one for women who are pregnant, if you're depressed. I mean, there's really a lot of different options, and they range from 2 to 10 minutes. So you can sort of, if you just have 2 minutes during your day, you need a quick breathing break, you can get one in. And Relax VR is very similar as well, developed primarily for anxiety and people experiencing pain. Again, you have a landscape that you can control, is it night or day, and the length of the meditation. And then you have something like Alt Space, which is actually a social application for VR. And here you can go in and you can meditate with people all over the world at any time of day in multiple languages to engage in mindfulness practice. It's incredible, and I highly recommend it. You have something like Skill Master VR, which actually has an object that pulsates, so the sort of the pacing of your breath to help you breathe, get into the rhythm. Even Deepak Chopra has his own mindfulness application in VR with beautiful images and his beautiful mindfulness meditations going in the background. And Lumen was developed for children who are about to go into surgery. And you have trees and plants here that light up to help the child pace their breathing. So lots of different options. And this is just a brief overview. And then you can have meditative spaces. Like, for example, there's the art application Tilt Brush, where you can create lots of meditative spaces, or anything for that matter that you might want to create in an artistic space. It's a pretty incredible application and how I got started in VR. And then you have something like Nature Treks, where you can create your own nature scenes. So, for example, I can be underwater in the ocean, and I can create schools of fish going by and beautiful whales coming by, and there's soft meditative music in the background while this is occurring. That's really relaxing. And you have something like Sound Self VR, where you would modulate your voice, and the graphics that you're looking at will change. So if I go the graphics that I'm seeing in VR will adjust to my vocal tones. So I'm about to show you a series of clips of me using the guided meditation app. First clip that we have here is me selecting, I'm going to be in outer space, this is the location, and I am doing maternity meditation, mindfulness meditation. I'm almost 6 months pregnant now, so this is much needed. And you can see I can choose the amount of time, and this is just going to give you an overview of what it's like to be in outer space for a meditation. You also have a first-person experience here. This is what I'm seeing in the VR.
Would you like music? What music is the right fit? Soften your body into your seat. Take your awareness inward. Let's start by checking in with your body today. We turn our gaze inward to connect with the self, the inner truth, the core of our being. It is from this place that we can find the strength to overcome any tension or stress felt in the outer body. In today's meditation,
there you see me portaling around in the application. I can change my view and travel around the scenes.
Release physical tension. This is something we can practice while we're pregnant to release any physical tension that builds in the body, so that when we're in labor, we can soften and release into the contractions rather than tensing them, which makes the pain of them worse. Start by bringing your awareness to the parts of you that are connected to the floor or furniture. Concentrate on the feeling of this beneath. Notice how the weight of your body rests on these points. As you breathe in, feel this part of you expanding with the breath and softening further on the exhale. Bring your awareness now to your lower body. Scan from the toes, up the calves and thighs, all the way to the hips and buttocks. Bring your awareness to the torso now. Scan the low back. Scan over your growing belly.
So there you get a sense of me exploring the scene, just focusing on my breath, listening to the meditation. And let's take a look at another one. Nature scenes are very popular for VR, for mindfulness. So let's take a look here, and you can see what I'm saying.
Welcome to your Yoga Nidra practice. In this course, we'll use an ancient technique from yoga to bring you to a state of deep relaxation. The practice will build layer upon layer to take you through what's known in Sanskrit as the Panchamaya Kosha, the 5 layers of the self. Each of the 10 guided meditations in this series can be used as a complete standalone practice. But if you find that you're craving a longer, deeper experience of Yoga Nidra, the 10 recordings can be played one after another to form a full 100-minute practice. First, it's important to make
So you can see here, I'm looking all around the island. I can sit in the beautiful flowers and look at the beautiful palm trees. I'm portaling around. I'm getting all different angles of the island here.
No physical effort in this practice. Although you can benefit from the power of Yoga Nidra at any time of day, it's best not to practice just before going to sleep at night.
This is a Yoga Nidra relaxation meditation.
Make sure you won't be disturbed for the duration of your practice. Lie down on your back on the floor with a rug or yoga mat beneath you for comfort. The arms are wide, with the palms facing up towards the sky. And the legs are wide, with the feet dropping out to the
This
side.
one's really fun because you can go inside the huts. I'm sitting now out on the deck.
If you're pregnant, please lie on your left side instead of on your back, and use cushions and blankets to support your body in any way that feels good to you.
I just went underwater.
Are you comfortable?
The shimmer there is the
Is
water
there
above my head.
in the
You
lower
can see me sort of floating a little bit here.
shoulders or the legs? If so,
The underwater
try
scene
to
for this one is amazing with the tropical fish
underneath your knees.
and our huge turtle here.
Relaxes the hands
It's so real.
and releases the
Whoa! There's those sensory motor contingencies.
You could
Wow.
also use a folded blanket under the shoulders or the head to ease tension there.
Pretty incredible experience.
Turn the head very slowly from side to side.
So I love the underwater scene in this tropical island for mindfulness practice. And you know, one of the things that I really love about engaging with this application is that, you know, when you've had a mindfulness practice for a long time, sometimes it's hard to want to sit down and just focus on your breath. Even if you haven't, sometimes it's hard. And there are also movement meditations, which is the one I'm going to be listening to here. And there are some pretty wild scenes. So let me just get this started so you can see.
Notice the world around you.
Where I can portal around and really just explore. You know, sometimes I just need to hear that soothing voice,
What the world around you
but I need a real distraction in order to sort of focus my attention and engage in my mindfulness practice.
Sit comfortably with your arms by your side. Exhale in this position. As you inhale,
Here I am portaling around
up from the
this ancient Egyptian
As you
site.
exhale, lower them down. Continue these movements. As you inhale, the arms come up from the front. And as you exhale, lower the arms down.
I can even portal up into the sky and look over the whole environment.
The movement follows the breath. Begin this movement with your arms by your side. You want to move only as far as is comfortable. Exhale in this position. As you inhale, raise one arm up from the front. Then as you exhale, lower your arm down. As you inhale, raise the other arm up from the front.
I'm portaling along here, moving through the environment.
Inhale, one arm up. Exhale.
And this
Lower
is a pretty incredible environment.
Then inhale the other arm up. You're alternating.
Lifting my arm
Exhale, lower the arm.
to the pace of the meditation, of the movement meditation. Very gentle, very user-friendly.
Do one more repetition. The movement follows the breath.
So you can see lots of options there for engaging in mindfulness meditation in the guided meditation app. I'd like to show you a little clip here today. This is Reverend Jeremy Nichols. He's the owner of Evolve VR in Altspace, and he leads mindfulness meditation along with offering many different types and kinds and different languages that you can go into Altspace and join and meditate with people all over the world. And this is me asking him about, just sort of thinking, reflecting on, is this a distraction from my mindfulness practice and, just an illusion that I need to get through and, sort of taking me away from my mindfulness practice. And this is part of the dialogue that we had in Altspace.
So in VR, the illusion of the body is obvious, right?
Right.
I mean, it is literal. So I think that's helpful, to just reinforce that idea that none of this stuff is real.
I really appreciate that reflection, because that's one of sort of in my own reflecting on the experience, just sort of thinking about, is this as a detraction from my mindfulness experience? It's just sort of just questioning myself, like, is this an illusion that I'm putting and thus not really sort of engaging? Like, these are just sort of some self-reflective questions I've had. But,
Sure.
I think what you're saying is a better sort of position on that experience, in that it gives us an opportunity to acknowledge that there is an illusion and that all of it is in many ways an illusion.
And I don't mean, like, I'm not a Buddhist who says, like, the things that happen to our body don't matter,
Right.
or the pain that people feel, or like all that is real also.
Right.
But how we engage with it and how we choose to let it control us is much more of a choice than we realize. And I think this is a process of helping us get that. And yeah, I think it's just so obvious here. It's amazing. And, me and my dad obviously talk about this a lot. He's who taught me to meditate at a young age, and we traveled in India on a Buddhist pilgrimage together. We've had a lot of talks about this stuff in general, and I think one of the places we've come to with VR is distractions are great. Mm-hmm. It's really your greatest teacher. We talk about that all the time in meditation. And for people who are, long-time meditators, it's kind of neat to run into some new distractions, because you learn new things about your mind every time you have to engage with new distractions. For people who have never meditated before, there's a lot of gamers, young people here who run into this class, and maybe they give it a try because it's a new thing in a familiar space.
Yes.
So I think, there's also that aspect of this that's just evangelical in the best sense, I think. Mm-hmm. We don't go out and try to convert anyone to mindfulness or meditation, right. But we sit here with great people and we practice it, and some people stumble in who would never stumble into that space normally, whatever that means. And, we've had some really cool experiences with people who have discovered meditation here.
So just a little bit about mindfulness in Altspace there with Reverend Jeremy Nichols. And you can go on YouTube, and there's lots of different meditative spaces that you can use and engage in VR. Here we have a kindness meditation going on that you can join. Again, here's an example of rotational tracking rather than positional. So I couldn't go out there and join the crowd if I wanted to meditate with them. But does it even really matter? And this is where the purpose of your application really defines how you're going to, whether you really need something like the Vive, or if something like the Oculus Go is really enough for your practice. And I also set up in the classroom some experiences with mindfulness and VR, and just some of the feedback that I got. So I teach counseling in the Creative Art Therapies department, where our students get a dual degree in art, music, dance, therapy, and counseling. And this was in one of their counseling theory courses. We were talking about mindfulness therapies. And, they thought that it was cool. The headset was a little heavy. Sometimes it could be pixelated. Again, this idea that mindfulness in this, platform is different than other platforms, but might be easier to engage because you can play with it. So here we have one of our students trying it on, and this is the Vive.
If you look all around, you can move around in the space. You can press that button to see different areas of the landscape.
There is an orientation needed. The nice thing is you can see what she's seeing on the laptop back there. This is a wired Vive.
You see a grid around the room. That's
so we have
when
the
you get
wire
close
to the
a
ceiling.
wall.
There's those sensory motor contingencies. It's actually real. Can I step here?
It's interesting. Like I want to feel like the things. But
Yes.
It's I know it's not there.
Right.
And also, like JT said, it's disorientating not seeing my body.
Yeah. That takes a minute to get kind of used to.
She's very tactile.
So in guided meditation, you are disembodied, you don't have a virtual body. And so again, thinking about those terms, the plausibility of the illusion of body ownership, she's noticing that it's strange not to have a body in VR.
I feel that, actually when I first went in there, I would just be going
Yeah.
And it's I feel like a lot of the initial, so it's I feel like you need a session for them to explore the environment, to get that wow, this is cool, I want to immerse myself, and then
sort of an orientation to
an
it.
orientation, because I feel myself, I'm ooh, I want to see if I can explore this tree.
Yes.
Okay.
So there she's noticing that it's, you definitely need an orientation if you're going to walk somebody through using this kind of technology. And also that, she wants to go ahead and touch the virtual leaves and the trees in there.
Grid that moves up about 1 feet away from a wall, so you just want to back off from the grid.
Okay, perfect.
Do you usually game at all or anything?
Yeah, I actually do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So does this have you been in VR before?
Vaguely. I mean, I've seen a lot of footage of VR chat or something like that.
Okay.
Because that really blew up last December or so.
I can't remember one of those buttons there. I would just kind of press them till you figure it out.
Yeah.
It will allow you to portal around. I think if you
There's a movement
you
right
press
here.
right here, in the center,
Mhm.
I think that will.
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
There you
Oh,
go.
wow.
And you can portal around the island.
So, is this intended to be more walking or sitting or what do you?
Well, that's a good question. This is meditation, so one of the interesting experiences I kind of find is I usually close my eyes when I meditate.
Yeah, me too.
And so, but when I'm in here, I want to keep them open.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean for mindfulness in VR?
Yeah, because I think that some of it, a lot of meditation usually involves cutting off sensory stimuli. I guess.
Right.
So, that's not to say that it has to, but I think people are more going to be they're gonna be exploring the novelty of this whole virtual world, versus any of the prompts that you're getting told to take 3 deep breaths or anything like that.
Right.
You're gonna be oh wow, there's ocean right here and there's palm trees.
So definitely some truth to that when you first get started, the novelty of it. It's beautiful. It's a different type of technology you want to explore. Now that I've been using it for over, 2 years, there's less of that newness and novelty, and I'm able to lean into the mindfulness meditations. But it's something to think about when you're first orienting somebody to the technology. So what are some challenges? There's still some issues with realism, right? When I'm on a tropical island in VR, I sadly do not really feel like I'm in Hawaii. Depending on the application and how, if you portal or walk around, some people can experience motion sickness or, just not feeling real well. It's still a growing technology. Some people are using it, some people aren't. The cost, the Vive is still very expensive, as is the Rift. So there's some issues there around cost, but this is really coming down recently as new head-mounted displays are coming out. And not all the applications are cross-platform. So just because you have an application for one head-mounted display doesn't mean you can use it for another. The resolution could definitely improve. And, I use the Vive, the tracking technology. I still have to have these sensors on the walls. That could be a setback for some. The haptic feedback can definitely improve. And really, what I find interesting is, what are these social norms now that we're in this environment? When I'm in alt space, what's it mean to, be kind and thoughtful, and how to communicate with each other in this new space? So, not a lot of stuff going on there yet in the literature. I mean, there's lots of quantitative coming out about how mindfulness in VR can help to reduce anxiety and pain, and be a good support and coping mechanism. However, so there you see like the VR for specific phobias, that's been going on for a long time, since really like 1992, I believe. And we're just beginning to think about how VR might be used in the classroom with adult students and in counseling and counselor education. And one of the cool things I think about VR, this is really what's highlighted as we're, just as a counselor and counselor educator, is that it really gives an opportunity for somebody to have a first-person perspective. So there are applications, that, like for this one here, Notes of Blindness, that give you an opportunity to understand what it's like to be blind. You have John Hall's recordings in the background, and you move around in that environment as though you're blind. There's a medical ethics program here where you have to be, you have a client who really is demanding that they have antibiotics, and you, the doctor, have to compassionately confront them and tell them it's not what they need them for. So you can already see it's really growing in terms of its potential as a learning tool. And since mindfulness is often about deepening our empathy, I thought it was important here to just talk a little bit about empathy in VR. New technology is coming out. Haptics are getting better. Here this woman has a haptic where you can actually feel like someone's stroking your arm. Adaptive technology for people who might not be able to use their hands. Better 360 video quality, more immersive experiences. So lots of new technology coming down the pike here. And I'd love to start some community building. I have a Facebook group here, Virtual Reality and Counselor Education, Counseling and Psychotherapy. Please feel free to join. We're trying to build some community around those who are passionate about virtual reality. I have lots of apps and resources I'm happy to share with you. And thank you so much for coming to my presentation today, exploring mindfulness in virtual reality.